Combat robotics is an exciting sport that I personally think more people should know about. So I'm here to tell you what you need to know if you want to fight robots that fight other robots. One of the first steps should be to find what events are in your area. This will help you determine what weight class your first robot should be. Robot combat events and Builders Database are websites specifically for posting events. So they'll be your best bet unless you've already found a local group, maybe through Discord or Facebook. As far as what weight class to start with, I personally recommend an ant weight robot for your first robot since they're popular in the Midwest, so events are plentiful, plus their small size makes them relatively affordable and easy to make. If you have a 3D printer and can find an event, plastic ant might be a better place to start. These events are less competitive and the robots are even less expensive than their open counterpart. Fairy weight is also a good starting point because they are even cheaper than ants and the square cube law makes them more forgiving. Beetle weight events are also common, but at a higher price point I can't recommend a beetle weight for beginners. Only take a second to shout out some communities that you should check out if you're looking to find other builders. If you're in the Midwest like me, you should check out the MRCA. If you're in the Northeast, there is NHRL and GSCRL. If you're in Washington, there's WAR. If you're in near Southern California, there's SCAR. I know Florida, Oklahoma, and Tennessee also have their own robot leagues. And once you've figured out what event you're going to, we gotta sign up. I'll focus on RCE for this explanation. Events are typically posted before registration, so you can create an account, team, and robot on the site before registration even opens, even if your robot isn't quite built yet. I've seen event spots fill up quickly, so you may end up on the wait list. But don't worry, builders often aren't able to make it or their bots aren't ready, so check back in closer to the event to see if you're off the wait list. On the flip side, if you signed up and you realize you can't compete, be sure to remove your bot so competitors on the wait list and event organizers can plan accordingly. Note that many events may send you to another site to register. These events also typically require their registration fees up front, so they tend to not fill up as quickly. Once you've found an event, be sure to read the rules for the event. This includes match, tournament, safety, and build rules. There are many rules that are consistent between events, but some events have rules unique to the individual event. Now that we have that out of the way, you'll need a robot. I recommend a servo lifter or a flipper for your first robot. They are much safer than spinners, especially at the small weight classes, and as a beginner you likely don't have access to a test box. Beginners, and especially children, should understand robot safety before moving on to more dangerous robots like spinners. Other builders recommend wedges for your first bot for the same reasons I mentioned, but I feel that the lack of weapon limits your learning opportunities with your robot. As far as getting a robot, you have a few options. Simply buying one is a straightforward way. There are a few sites that sell bot kits, and most are competitive and easy to get spares for. Also, there are individuals on buy-sell trade sites that sell their old bots, although it may be harder to source spares for those. Note that if you're buying a bot, see if you can get the CAD files. This will help for sourcing spare parts and making modifications if you want. If you have access to a 3D printer, there are files for combat robots to print. Although these files can be found on your favorite STL share sites, Team Malice has several bots to print and instructions on how to assemble them. The last option is to design your own robot. That subject is beyond the scope of this video, but I do plan on getting around to making videos on robot design, so subscribe if you want to catch that. I will say here though, Onshape and Fusion 360 are free design software popular among builders, and you can find tutorials on them here on YouTube. Additionally, in the description I put links to collections of resources other builders already put together that can help. Also, you'll find everything else that I've referenced in this video. Now that we have a robot and an event, let's make the rest of our preparations. Make sure you do a functions check on your electronics on the robot, and then make sure to do it again because robot electronics are notorious for failing for mysterious reasons, bad soldering, you name it. Sometimes it happens, especially with combat robots. And if you have a spinner, you'll need a test box for testing the robot with the weapon. They aren't that expensive, and there's already been a few other creators that have already made videos, and I'll put a link in the description like I mentioned before. When doing these tests on a tabletop, be sure to keep the wheels off the ground with a roll of tape or something. Be sure you have the chance to drive it around before the event. Many builders don't do this, so you can actually get a real leg up by just taking the time to practice. But if you're doing this with a dangerous spinner, ensure that the weapon can't be turned on. Although it will control differently since it won't be under the gyroscopic forces that would be if the weapon was spinning. Again, you shouldn't be testing the weapon without a test box. And it's hard, and most test boxes don't have much driving space. This circles back to why I recommend starting with a relatively safe bot as your first robot. If you do have a robot with a dangerous weapon, it needs to have a failsafe so that everything stops when the controller is disconnected. This is a safety feature that is required for pretty much any event. You'll also need a physical weapon lock for any dangerous weapon for when your robot is not fighting. These are typically in the form of a clamp or pin. It is also good practice, and in some cases required, to cover up sharp parts of your robot when not in the box. These can range from custom 3D printed parts to more impromptu solutions. Now that we know your robot should function, let's go over what I recommend you bring to the event. You want spare parts for your robot. For Bigfoot, I have an entire additional robot ready to go, but that may be hard to swing at your first event. Parts I go through the most are wheels and drive motors, so you may want a few more of those than other things. But this may be different depending on your robot's design, and as you compete with the same robot, you'll learn what you need more of on hand. So I don't make this video too long, I'll just rapid fire some tools that I use most regularly. Drivers for whatever screws you are using in your robot, pliers, a portable soldering iron setup, wire strippers, electrical tape, duct tape, glue on a roll, side cutters. Extension cords and surge protectors are also important since most events have limited outlets. Also, since there's a 99% chance you're using LiPo batteries, you'll need a charger and a LiPo bag. And actually use the bag when you charge because LiPo fires are a real possibility. Also, events are often all day, so you probably want to bring a snack, water, and possibly a lunch. Now, let's get to the day of the event. I recommend arriving early so you can get a good table and double check that your robot still works. And you'll have time to fix it when it inevitably doesn't. You can get yourself settled in, but be aware that you have to share the likely limited space with other builders. But if you're lost, confused, or need help, most builders are willing to help. This community is very helpful and welcoming. Just keep in mind that they likely have their own repairs and preparations that they need to make on their own bots. Expect to check in, pay for registration if you didn't ahead of time, and get weighed in and go through safety. Listen to directions from the event organizers and try to be proactive in getting ready for your fights by paying attention to where you are in the queue and or bracket. Although events get relatively tight minimal repair times that they'll tell you at the beginning of the event, you will likely have more repair time than that at the beginning of the event, but expect this time to shrink as bots get eliminated from the tournament. I feel like this may go without saying, but expect your bot to get destroyed, lose parts, and have things stop working for seemingly no reason. Adversity is a cornerstone of combat robotics, and learning from setbacks is what keeps the sport interesting, but can be intimidating to newcomers. But if you stick to it, I'm sure you'll find it to be a very rewarding experience. Now I actually asked some people in the MRCA Discord some tips that they recommend to new builders, and so I'm just going to list some of them off. Dean from Michigan recommended to start out defensive, not offensive, because you don't want to get one shot in your first fight. But then Mike said, or you could just YOLO it. And Brendan said, your first event is to learn. If you win a few matches, then that is just a bonus. If you're an experienced builder and made it this far into the video, I think it'd be great if you left a comment down below with tips that you have for new builders or something that I missed that you think new builders should know. And if you're a new builder, feel free to ask questions down below and I'll do my best to answer them, either in the comments directly or in a future video. Thanks for watching. Oh, hey, do you want to do the call to action? Do you want to say the call to action? Tell them to like and subscribe. Maybe comment on the video. Maybe tell them to comment on the video that they should share tips for beginners, and maybe have beginners, you know, ask questions in the comments. Do you want to do that?